Gretchen Carlson played a key role in bringing focus to sexual harassment in the news media. In 2016, the former Fox News anchor settled a lawsuit she brought against Fox CEO Roger Ailes. Last year, the Anoka, Minnesota native published the New York Times bestseller, Be Fierce, Stop Harassment and Take Your Power Back. Carlson is back in town this week as part of a nationwide tour to combat gender-based discrimination. It's called the Gretchen Carlson Leadership Initiative. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Also
with us, Gretchen Carlson has teamed up on the tour with the nonprofit group All In Together. Lauren Leader-Chivée is the co-founder of that group. Lauren, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Glad you're both here. You know, you and I talked earlier in the week on NPR about this, and I asked you this. So many famous women have come forward to speak their truth about being sexually harassed. When, though, does this Me Too movement become truly a cultural movement?
I think it already is a cultural movement. I mean, when I jumped off the cliff 19 months ago, I could have never envisioned that we'd be in the position that we're in now, where courage has become so contagious. I mean, the idea that I felt so alone in doing that, and now we've had thousands of women feel comfortable enough and brave enough to come forward.
What about the women, the waitresses?
Yes, I mean, and I've shared with you before that is my greatest concern. It's why we created the Gretchen Carlson Leadership Initiative, for that single mom who's working 2 jobs and trying to raise kids and is also being sexually harassed. How do you help her? And that question really pained me over the last 19 months because I didn't have an answer for it right away. So through my fund, I set up this grant with Lauren and her organization to create the Leadership Initiative for underserved women. So we're doing 9 cities. Minneapolis, St. Paul's, the second group of 3 days of workshops, specifically targeting that group of women to give them resources and a voice.
Is it a how-to, practical instructions on how to deal with stuff, or what's the sort of the work product here?
So, you know, what we really wanted to try to do was to demonstrate to women who've had extraordinary difficulties, who've faced challenges that, you know, none of us would wish on anyone, that there are a lot of routes to power and there are a lot of ways to have a voice. And so this initiative is actually particularly to give women the tools of political and civic power. You know, 1 in 3 American women, and that's a low estimate, by the way, the estimate is 1 in 3 or more American women have experienced either harassment, domestic violence, or sexual assault. Those women are less likely to speak up and participate politically. And that means that we've got tens of millions of American women who are counting themselves out of a political process, who are not speaking up on the very issues that need to be changed societally. And we need to give those women all the tools and resources to do that. And we certainly need them to be engaged in the political process, which is an indispensable part of women's empowerment in the country.
So then, kind of paint a picture for us. The women who come to the workshops, what are you teaching them specifically? How to run for office? What does that look like?
So my main goal is to inspire them to lead by example in somebody who decided to come forward in the most excruciating choice of my life, and to let them know that if I can do it, that I want to hand off that courage to them to be able to do the same things in their lives. And it's not just about domestic violence or sexual harassment. It's about any way in which you feel you're being put down. So that could be bullying for young kids in school, or any other way in which you don't feel like you're living up to your expectation.
Is the ground a little more fertile because this is not particularly a partisan issue? I mean, there's Republican.
It's not a partisan issue.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's so apolitical. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
nonpartisan.
Yeah, it's a nonpartisan group. Listen, when somebody decides to sexually harass you, they don't ask you what political party you're in first. I mean, they just do it. And that's why we should all be concerned about this. And I've been pounding the pavement on Capitol Hill for the last year to try and change laws. And I'm proud to say that last month we were successful in bringing a bipartisan bill, in the House and the Senate, to get rid of secret arbitration clauses in employment contracts that keep this issue secret and under wraps. And this is a huge move. Now we got to pass it. But the idea that we could get both political parties to come together on this issue speaks volumes for what we might be able to do for women.
Do you think if it passes that the president will sign it, though?
Well, we're going to have to wait and see. But, we're working very hard on getting hearings, and so we can educate the public on why this needs to happen.
Lauren, I've heard some commentary that HR departments are basically there for the company. they're not independent. They're there to protect the company more than the employees. Is there something to that? Or?
Well, I'll tell you, I do a tremendous amount of work with Fortune 500 companies and companies across the spectrum, and I'll tell you there's a huge range of answers to that, and there's no one answer. And Gretchen has said this before, I think most human resources professionals, by the way, the field is heavily female, right, are very well-intentioned, but they're often put in very difficult situations because, of course, their checks are written by the companies that they work for, and in many cases there is, the general counsels particularly, you know, are really after protecting the company from reputational risk, which is their primary goal. And so in many cases, HR leaders don't have a lot of choices. But I will tell you, when you asked the question in the beginning about are we seeing a big change? I've been sharing this. I've been getting calls every single day from executives in Fortune 500 companies who are deadly serious about making major changes in their organization, not just on this one issue, but on conduct and culture generally, and ensuring that we are creating inclusive workplaces where women can be successful. And, you know, this is such a vast issue that covers so many dimensions, but I really believe that there is the awareness of this is changing the way men are thinking about this. It's changing the way business is thinking about this. There are consequences for the first time, and women are inspired to speak up, and because they know that their speaking up will actually lead to a change.
Well, I'm wondering, though, do you fear a backlash, perhaps? Because, I mean, we're already seeing a very wealthy Democratic donor saying she's going to withhold money from candidates who wanted Al Franken to resign. I mean, I'm wondering, there are some who think that the pendulum has swung too far. Do you worry about a backlash at all?
Well, I think we disagree on this a little bit. I really don't, because I have to tell you the thousands of women who reached out to me after my story broke. The stories were, there was no gray area. They were so horrific, even in 2017, 18, that it's not like somebody's bringing a lawsuit because somebody says to them in the office, I like your dress. Right. Okay? I mean, these stories were so over the top. I mean, look at the revelations and horrific stories we've heard coming out of Hollywood. Those are the kind of stories that I was hearing from everyday women across every socioeconomic line in every profession. Mm-hmm. So I think that the backlash is kind of an excuse and a cop-out.
I agree with that.
And I hope we don't focus too much on that, because there are so many other stories to tell, and bringing it full circle to the women you're talking about, the waitresses and the people who don't feel like they've ever had a voice.
Well, is this then a kind of a false discussion of the different levels of behavior? There have been some talk about that. You know, how to punish or what the consequences are for the different levels of this.
That's true. There are different levels.
And what are we to do about that?
Well, look, I think that many businesses are getting very clear about this, and they are being explicit with their employees about what is and is not acceptable. And I agree with Gretchen 100%. It's the discussion of this backlash and gray area is a distraction, because it is a very clear and bright red line. And I think anyone who thinks about it for more than a second can understand the difference between flirting and an abuse of power. And I think we need to stay really relentlessly focused on ensuring the conversation and the actions and the impact and the consequences rest on that very bright red line.
I heard your interview with Kathy earlier this week on the radio, and you ruled out running for Minnesota, at least at the present time. But I looked it up today. Senator Murphy in Connecticut is up this coming fall, so it's kind of late to get in there. But Blumenthal, the other senator's up in, 2022, I think, is the next one. Is that, should we keep our eye on that date on the calendar?
No. They asked me to run in Connecticut.
Against Murphy?
Yes. Then, you know, that was not in the cards for me at the time. And, I mean, it was ironic that you had on the senator, because there was, I guess, rumblings here in Minnesota that maybe that would be something that I would be interested in here. I love Minnesota, but it's not in the cards for me to move back here right now. But my life has worked in mysterious ways. I never expected to be the face of this issue, I can tell you that. And so I'm not going to close the door on politics, because I honestly don't know. But right now, it's not something I'm focused on.
Well, you're making a huge difference in a lot of other ways, too, politically, and running for office is only one piece of that.
Come back and tell us about the new Miss America pageant you're going to put together.
Yeah, well, that's my, let's see, that's my 5th full-time volunteer job. And that's a huge undertaking, but trust me, stay tuned with that.
All right. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.